Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lisa, and becoming live here today, all the way from Idaho. I loved
Hi.
chatting with you last week and hearing your story, your beautiful story, and about your beautiful family and your beautiful grandkids. Lisa, my name's Beth. I'm from Beachway, and Lisa is an alumni living in Boise, Idaho. And she's
Mhm.
been sober for 9 months. And Lisa, I love your story about what really touched me is that it wasn't just about the addiction for you. There was more to it. And I think a lot of us don't realize that there's actually much more to the story than the addiction. And your perspective on that was just so heartwarming and eye-opening. So could you just share a little bit of your story, of your background story with our community?
Sure, sure. And you hit the nail on the head when you say that, there was so much more than just the addiction going on in my life. I arrived at Beachway January of 2021, 22, whichever year this is.
21.
21. Yeah, there we go. Um, and I was broken. I was sick. I was tired of being tired. I was sick of being sick. I was broken. The relationships in my life were broken. I had really wrecked things up far and wide with my family. And when I arrived, I was absolutely a mess and at my rock bottom. And it didn't take me very long to figure out once I got there that I had arrived at the place where I was absolutely needed to be. Absolutely.
And you
When
you
I,
mentioned that you felt like there was consequences for your actions that kind of triggered you to reach out to Beachway because you felt like things
sure.
were happening with your family, things were happening with your health, and
Hmm.
that was the catalyst to kind of get you there. And
Right.
right?
Right. And I don't know how many, I think about, I don't know how many mornings I would wake up. I spent about 3 years drinking really heavy. Um, my original drug of choice was opiates. I took my first dose of opiates when I was probably 15. Um, I underwent several surgeries in my teens and then actually into my 30s, and I ended up with degenerative disc disease in my back. And so, what I found when I was 15, and I was incredibly uncomfortable, I had lost my mother at the age of 15. Um, my mother was an active alcoholic the last 3 years of her life, and she was drinking and driving and ran a stop sign at age 42 and was killed instantly. And my life pretty much spiraled out of control from there. And when I was able to quell those completely uncomfortable and disturbing emotions and broken thought patterns in my head with opiates, it worked. It worked. I thought I had arrived. I was cured, and I went from there to drinking and whatever I could do to quell that trauma that was boiling up inside of me and causing the behaviors that just took my life into a spiral of one bad decision after the other. And what finally ended up happening in my life, I could put together several great years of sobriety. I started college, right out of high school. I had a year and a half in and was doing great, had some great success. And all of a sudden I felt uncomfortable and I had to blow my life up. And so I did. Then I got married. That went well. Then I had to blow my life up. And then I had kids and I got uncomfortable and I had to blow my life up. It's like this vicious circle that the trauma that was in my life that wasn't being processed, Will, my trauma therapist there at Beachway, who I cannot say enough wonderful things about, told me one time, and I'll never forget it. He said, Lisa, when you understand the trauma, the behaviors make sense. And I look back at my life now and oh, yeah, no wonder I did that. Well, yeah, no wonder that happened. Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And, until I took the time to address those traumas, to address the things that I had carried along like this big old sack of rocks on my back, I was going to continue this cycle of addiction. And it could be opiates, it could be alcohol, it could, it was food, it was just a cycle, a constant cycle. And when I turned 52, although I had gotten off the opiates, I had started drinking pretty heavy. I had my kids raised, and so I was drinking. And every morning I'd wake up in the morning, okay, that's it. I'm done. I know the solution. I know what to do. I would pour out my bottle of wine and say, this is it. This is it. This is the last day. I'm not going to wake up with another hangover. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I was back at the market buying another bottle of wine. And it was, it went on like this for 3 years. And I kept, why can't I solve this? I know what to do. I am not a stupid woman. I am capable. I have done all of these amazing things in my life. Why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? And I just beat myself up and just, absolutely trying to do it with my own self-will, because I couldn't understand why I couldn't. And what I learned once I arrived at Beachway broke into shattered in pieces, because what had happened is I had been drinking and driving, and I fell asleep at a stop sign with my foot on the brake at age 52, and in the middle of the night. And it's a miracle of God that I didn't kill myself or kill someone else, because at age 42, my mother had the same situation, fell asleep, blew through the stop sign, and killed herself. And I could have done that to my children. I could have done that to my grandchildren. And I really could not have been in a lower place in my life than I was the day that I arrived at Beachway. And what I learned there, once I was given the opportunity to understand that I had really arrived where I needed to be, and I was given the opportunity to go into the trauma track, to work with Will and with his team, and and understand where all of this came from, and once I am able to heal the trauma, then the rest can be addressed. But until I do, I was going to be stuck in that cycle until I did address that trauma, until I did process that trauma. And it's almost like growing up. At 53, I'm finally growing up.
I so appreciate, Lisa, your honesty with all of us. It's got to be hard to share some of those stories, but there are people out there who are struggling with similar things, and they may not realize that, they have to address the trauma to be able to move forward. I think you're a really good example of what happens when you actually do that and you address the underlining trauma issue. I want to share with everybody, when we asked you to survey to see what your experience was at Beachway, you did say that that number one, your relationship with your husband has now been healed. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And I think also with your kids, which then also brings you your grandkids. And I think for anybody listening, I think that's really important, that your family is rooting for you. Whatever you might be struggling with, your family is rooting for you, and they want you to get better. And I think you're a great example of how that has kind of come full circle. I also appreciate, I'm going to just read really quick these things that you checked off after you went through the Beachway program. You said that you feel safe, that you open a bank account, you're holding a job, you're there for your family, you're making new and different friends, you're accountable, you're reliable, your obsession has been removed, you have living skills, you're working through your fear, you have hope, your trauma, you've dealt with your trauma and you are free of your trauma. You're part of the recovery process, you're part of the mental health progress, you're part of the trauma progress, and you're taking proper medications. So these are all the things that you checked. And I think you need to give yourself a little pat on your back, because there's a lot of hard work that went into getting there.
It is a lot of hard work
to be there. when you look at that list of where you are today and you think about where you were 9 months ago,
Hmm.
what would you say to somebody who, is thinking that they are trying to get better and there's something that they're also dealing with, but they're not sure what to do? Like,
Right.
where, what would you say to them? And not as a clinical person or a
Hmm.
professional person, but just as like a friend or like somebody that would be in your alumni group. Like, what would you say to them, for your experience? It's been 9 months, right?
Yeah,
So it's pretty
right.
fresh.
It
Um,
is.
what would be the thing that you would want if somebody had said to you, when you were on the fence as to whether this was the right move for you to go get help?
Like I mentioned, I spent a really long time trying to solve what I thought was my problem by myself. And it like, you know, I know that what happens is a lot of times we get down on ourselves, and I did that, which, just fed more into the cycle. And strength comes from asking for help. It really does. And the needed the Beachway is such a gift. It really is such a gift. And um, it's the greatest gift I ever gave myself. And it was the greatest gift I ever gave my family. And our relationships now are so much better even than they were ever before. And again, Beachway's partly well, probably mostly wholly responsible for that, because when I was there, they worked with my family. Even they worked with my husband. Will met with my husband. They had family calls. There were resources for them. And while I was doing my work, they were doing their work. And I just cannot express enough how much better my life is today than it was, honest to goodness, ever, ever, ever. And we say this in AA a lot. You will live the life, you'll have the life that is your wildest dreams. And it is true. It is true. And even when you're in the brokenest, most broken spot that you can be, it is possible. It is possible. And reaching out is brave, but the best thing that you can do for yourself.
I love that. And your smile, it tells 1,000 words. I mean, I wish I got to actually see it last week as well. You have this huge smile, this huge personality. And to know that you've actually come through this and been able to come back to your family, come back to your grandkids. You said you're taking care of your little
Yeah.
grandsons today.
Yeah. Two
Um,
and
I,
four. They're
I
going to be
love that.
Spider-Man. Spider-Man for Halloween this weekend.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, just the imagine of all the joy and fun that you now have in your life that you can put this, you know, put it aside, at least this part,
Mhm.
this tragedy piece that you've been dealing with for 50 years or
Yeah,
so, that now you can finally know the tools to be able to move forward.
exactly. Exactly. Beachway gave me the tools to enable me to be comfortable finally in my own skin. Finally. And I spent so much of my life with this itch in the middle of my back that I could never reach, or I could never scratch it. And that's one of the things that Will says is getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. Life isn't all rainbows and unicorns now, but I know how to deal with it. And the joy that comes from that is overwhelming. When you are drinking and you are drugging, you're stuffing down those horrible feelings and disturbing emotions that you've had, but you're also stuffing down your joy and your happiness and all the exciting things that happen in life. And now I can finally feel that really overwhelming joy that I was missing.
Well, that I love that. What a great way to end our week, go into the weekend. Is such a beautiful story. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. I wish you the best of luck and kiss those baby boys for me.
I will. Happy
Bye,
Halloween.
Lisa.
Bye.